I don't usually share this. Folks around here think I tore down the old barn because of rot or insurance. That's what I tell them anyway. But that's not the real reason. This was winter of 2018, out in the hills near Bozeman. I was 44 at the time. Divorced, running cattle mostly on my own. Nothing big, enough to keep me working, not enough to justify help except during branding. My mornings never changed. Up before light, coffee in the green thermos, boots stiff as boards, and that old diesel engine clattering in the yard. Same routine every morning. The barn sat north of the house, leaning like it was tired of the wind. My grandfather built it. I hadn't kept stock in there for years, but I never took it down. I guess I liked seeing it there, even though it was just another thing to worry about. My old healer, Buddy, never went near it. Not since a raccoon tore into him one winter. He'd stop short, sniff the air, and head the other way. One morning, I cut behind the barn and stopped dead. Footprints. One set clear as could be in the fresh snow, big enough to be a grown man's. They circled the barn twice, then ended under the north window. No tire tracks on the county road. Probably nothing, I remember thinking. Some surveyor, maybe. But the idea of someone standing at that window staring in stuck with me. That day, I found some scrap lumber and nailed a couple of boards across the frame. Ugly, but it would do. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because I was scared, at least that's what I told myself. Just figured I'd keep an ear on things. TV was on low, Buddy snoring on his mat. Every hour or so I got up, checked the door, looked across at the barn. Nothing moved. Morning came. Coffee, boots, stock tank frozen solid. I walked up to the barn and my stomach sank. One of the boards was gone. Not broken, pulled clean. The nails lay in the snow. New prints pressed under the window, deeper than before. Like whoever it was stood there for a while, just watching in. That made me angry more than anything. I found longer screws, a hasp, and a heavy chain. Fixed the window good and tight this time. I even moved my trail cam from the pond. Strapped it high on a cottonwood facing the barn. Fresh batteries, empty card. I figured, fine, come back now, and I'll have your picture. Next morning I checked. Same story. One board gone. Inside, on the sill, was a wet coffee ring. The chain was still there, but someone had tied little twine knots around it, loops I hadn't made. Knots that would lift the weight of the chain just enough if you tugged right. That detail, it rattled me more than anything. Whoever it was, they weren't just wandering. They were careful. They were practicing. I pulled the trail cam. It had caught snowflakes, a magpie, then nothing. The screen showed low battery at 2:13 a.m., after which it quit. The batteries were new. I can't explain it. I picked up the phone and called the sheriff. The dispatcher said they'd log it, maybe drive by. Didn't give me much hope. That night, Buddy didn't sleep. Just lay there, head up, ears cocked. Around midnight, a storm knocked the power out. Moonlight lit the snow like a sheet of glass. I sat on the couch, trying to stay awake. Then it came, a sharp ping like a nail falling onto wood and rolling to rest. Low, but clear. My skin prickled. I grabbed the flashlight and rifle and crossed the yard. The barn loomed ahead, boards in place, except one. Then my light caught the window. And there it was. A face pressed against the glass from inside. Forehead touching, breath fogging a white circle. Eyes locked on me. Human eyes, unblinking. The light didn't startle him. He just looked right back at me, calm as if we'd planned this. "Hey," I called out. The face slid out of the beam slowly. Footsteps shifted inside, then a thump at the back. I'd forgotten that old rear door even existed. I went in anyway. Stupid, I know. The south doors groaned loud. My beam cut across rafters. Empty corners. Then I found the rear latch, unhooked, door pulled shut neat, like someone being polite on their way out. I circled the barn. Prince led from that door toward the ridge, then vanished where the wind scoured them away. Deputies showed up about 40 minutes later. Young guys. They found more than I had. A wire snare under my kitchen window. A stack of wood wedges cut for prying. Under a tarp by the barn, instant coffee, painter's tape, a grocery sack folded careful, and a pencil chewed down to cloth. They followed Prince until the ridge wiped them clean. Logged the report, told me to add lights. One of them asked what time I wake up at night. I didn't want to answer, but I said it around 2. He nodded, like that lined up with something he already knew. That wasn't the last time I saw the face. It showed up twice more. Once in full daylight, worse than night somehow. Pale, still eyes locked on me. Once at dusk, lips parted like he was whispering, but no sound reached me. Each time he held steady under the light. Calm. Certain. That was it for me. I called a guy with a flatbed and told him to bring the barn down. He didn't ask why. I ordered a shipping container. Steel can't be pried apart like wood. Before they tore it down, I kept one board with pry marks and hung it in my mudroom. I tell people it's spare lumber. Truth is, I keep it because I can't throw it away. A neighbor a mile down later found a tarp camp in their shelter belt. Coffee jar, snares, scraps of tape, Prince leading toward my place one night, back the next. No arrest, no name. Just gone. Even now, I wake at 2:13. Sometimes I hear a nail drop, though there's nothing left for it to fall from. Buddy's gone now, buried near the fence line. I miss the way he'd look at me like he knew before I did. What stuck with me isn't the face itself. It's how calm it was. Standing there, knowing I saw it and not moving an inch. That kind of certainty, it doesn't need to explain itself. I don't take barns for granted anymore. Out here, you can build walls, but you can't outweight someone willing to learn your rhythm. That's the lesson I live with every winter. I always forget how dark Vermont is until I'm standing in it again. In the city, the dark has color, signs, headlights, noise. Out here, it's like the sky seals shut. My name's Claire. I'm 29 and I make my living producing podcasts, mostly from my laptop in whatever city I happen to be in. October 2022, I flew home for a few days. My mom wanted attic boxes cleared, and I needed a break from my tiny apartment and podcast deadlines. Dad picked me up at the airport with cider donuts in my lap before I could protest. The house looked the same as it did in high school. White siding, slate roof, motion sensor on the porch that still refuses to turn on when it should. That squeaky screen door has been up next on Dad's fix list since 2006. I told them I'd take a walk before bed. My jet lag trick. The old loop trail behind the house is 20 minutes if you're not pretending to be in a movie. Mom told me to wear a hat. Dad offered me his old lantern. I waved my phone instead. Recording sound is a habit. I keep folders full of subway breaks, laundromat hums, ice scoops. So I slipped my phone into record mode and started the loop. Past the compost, down the dip where water collects around the old stone wall. The porch light finally flicked on behind me like it had to think about it first. That's where I saw the first light, warm and low. Not a porch light, more like a lantern flickering behind the trees. Then another deeper in, then one off to the side. They looked placed, not random. I ran through the options. No fireflies in October, no car headlights that steady, and no neighbor would string lights back here without Mom declaring war. I whispered hello and immediately regretted it. The sound just fell flat, as if the woods ate it. I left the phone running. Later, when I boosted the audio, I heard faint ticks. Irregular, like someone shifting pace with a zipper pull or ring-tapping metal. Human rhythm. I called out louder. Every light went out, not fading, cut. The kind of silence that presses in. That's when I heard an exhale close to my right ear, warm enough to register. Then the tiny click of a lantern knob turning, but no flame. I didn't call out again. I said nope and started back. By the time the yard came into view, the porch sensor finally lit. I thought that was it. But when I turned on the porch, I saw them again. One lantern snapped on deep in the trees, another lit lower, closer to the drive, a third at knee height, exactly where I'd walked. They didn't look like guides. They looked like barriers. Inside, I told my parents. Dad said, "Kids playing camp." Mom listed off neighbors' kids, half out of state, one with a broken arm. I played them my recording. Wind, my breath, the faint ticks. And under it, boosted, a single whispered, "Shh." Not mine. Dad asked, "Your phone can do that?" Which wasn't the point. He insisted we check. We walked back with his lantern, his voice calling, "Okay now," into the dark. No answer. Just the faint paraffin smell and leaves shifting where nobody stepped. The next day, the game warden came. He found them, not me. Tea light tins burned out and tucked under roots, then more further in. Finally, clear fishing lines strung chest high between trees, strong and almost invisible. Another line lower, knee height. A lattice meant to guide or slow someone. Control, not decoration. Kids rehearse dumb things, but his tone changed once he saw the lines. You did right going back. That night, I didn't walk. I stood on the porch, watching the light sensor flicker like it had an attitude. In bed, I kept replaying the recording. The whisper sat under my voice like it wanted to be heard without being found. I could have cut an episode around it. The woods answer back, but it felt wrong to use it. The third morning, he texted Dad. More tins, more fishing line. He'd taken them down. He'd do extra patrols for a while. Mom pushed pancakes, Dad grumbled about lanterns, and I pretended nothing stuck. But the truth is, it did. Here's what stays with me. The way those lights were placed. From a distance, they looked like an invitation. Up close, like a corridor. String lines where mouths and knees would be. Lights snapping off the second I spoke, as if on cue. And then 3 reappearing, behind, in front, at shin height when I thought I was safe. You can build a rational story out of it. Teenagers daring each other, someone practicing a prank, a ritual that didn't finish. Or you can admit the other thing, that it was set up for someone like me, that it was supposed to test how I'd move, how I'd respond. I still keep the clip on a drive. I never aired it. Sometimes I play it back just to confirm it's there. The ticks line up like footsteps. The whisper still looks like shh on the waveform. I've shown no one else. When people ask what Vermont in the fall is like, I tell them the truth. Leaves, cider, tourists. I don't mention lanterns. I walk the loop in daylight now when the porch light stays off because it knows it's supposed to. I track plants for a living, which sounds like I follow them around, but what I actually do is measure. Species, coverage, flowering, survival. Summer of 2019, I was outside Abilene, Texas on a grant to study drought-tolerant forbs. The rancher renting me a space said, "You can have the old travel trailer out by the fence line." My budget said yes before I did. The trailer had a working AC, a dorm fridge where I stored samples in paper bags, and linoleum curling at the edges like it was trying to leave. The water ran rusty at first, but cleared. The kind of place you put up with because it keeps the bugs out, and you're only supposed to be there for data, not comfort. I'd lay transects across pasture, stopping every 15 feet to record what was there. compass headings, notes about species. Sometimes a flower would be just starting to open, so I'd mark it and circle back at dusk. By 9, my shirt clung like I'd jumped in a stock tank. Cicadas hammered at my ears until I forgot what quiet was. By noon, the heat was syrup, so I'd retreat to the trailer, enter notes, drink water until I could taste plastic. Evenings I rinsed samples, lined them along the counter, and Skyped the lab once a week so I didn't forget how to talk to humans. By the 3rd week, the ranch hands treated me as the odd lady who measured weeds and talked into her phone. They were polite in that Texas way, direct, not showy. One afternoon, I mentioned I'd be out late to catch a dusk flowering. The older hand said, "You'll see her hat first." Another grin without humor. "Walks the fence. Midnight lady." They said it the way you pass along a story because you've inherited it. I laughed. "Coyotes don't wear hats." The older one looked at me. "You'd be surprised." At first, I thought nothing of it. Folklore is as common as barbed wire out there. But one morning I saw prints overlapping mine from the day before. Not boot prints, thin-soled, light. Small but not child-sized. They led toward the tall grass near the trailer. The next morning, a few of my transect flags weren't where I left them. Still upright, but off like they'd been nudged by inches. Always toward the trailer. I checked coordinates. My memory isn't romantic, I measure. They had moved. That night, I was in the trailer with the AC rattling and paperwork spread across the counter. Around 1:11 a.m., I heard soft footsteps outside. Light. Calm. Not scuffing like boots. They paused when I sat up, resumed when I lay back. They weren't coyotes. Too regular. The next day, the flags had moved again. Same direction. When I mentioned it, the older ranch hand just nodded. "She favors the quiet ones," he said. The other dropped a whistle on my trailer step without a word. That night, I saw the shadow. The curtain was thin, and the brim of a hat passed across it. My phone camera refused to focus through the glass. Morning brought more shifted flags, and I started sleeping in boots, with my flashlight ready. I told myself I'd get through the last week of data and leave. The worst moment came at the sink. I was brushing my teeth at the counter, the only faucet in the trailer that ran clear enough to use. The outside light was gone. The glass already turned dark, reflective. At first, I just saw myself. But when I leaned a little closer, trying to rinse, the reflection shifted, and I realized I wasn't just seeing me. She was outside, not a trick of the glass. An old woman, standing in the dark, inches from the window. Hat brim low, cardigan hanging loose, eyes fixed directly on me. Her mouth slightly open, like she was listing names under her breath. She didn't blink. I jerked back so fast my heel caught the edge of the rug. The cup slipped from my hand, water splashing across the counter, and I hit the floor hard. My elbow smacked the floor. When I scrambled up and looked again, she was gone. I swung the flashlight, and there was nothing but tall grass and dust motes. The sheriff came and logged trespass. He said folks get turned around at night. Not at a sink window, they don't. He told me to keep things lit, then he drove off. I moved my work to dawn. The heat hit harder, but daylight felt safer. At first light one morning, I nearly tripped over a milk crate set under the sink window. Upright, placed. My prints from the night before had been stepped in. That was it. I called the rancher. He came with his nephew. They looked at the crate, the screen, the prints, and apologized with their silence. He said he'd sit in his truck down the fence that night. I said I was leaving a day early. He didn't argue. I packed my samples tight, triple bagged. At 1:11, I was awake, waiting, but nothing came. No footfalls, no brim shadow, just cicadas pressing noise back in. I left before full sun. The nephew followed me to the county road, lifted a hand out the window, half "we've got it," half "we don't." Back home, weeks later, I got a link. County news. Woman found wandering fields at night. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance, hat brim low. Relatives said she'd been walking for decades, entering houses through unsecured windows. "No threat to public," the caption read. What I hold on to most isn't her face. It's the pattern. Flags nudged closer, prints overlapping mine, silence where cicadas should have been. Warnings. People ask why I didn't confront her. Because my body told me not to. That's enough. I write everything down when I'm in the backcountry. Graphite doesn't quit when batteries do, and a notebook will take the rain better than a phone. September 2018, Western Pennsylvania. I was hiking solo, 3-day loop for photos and time to myself. I had my usual kit: stove, bear hang line, Ursack as backup, camera body wrapped in a bandana to kill glare, lens in a wool hat so it wouldn't clink against metal, a few tortillas, jerky, oatmeal packs, peanut butter, instant noodles. I don't carry a gun. Redundancy and caution are my insurance. Before leaving the trailhead, I texted my sister the plan. She answered with a thumbs up and 2 knife emojis. Her way of saying, "Be smart." I signed the trail register at 9:12 a.m. Clear and plain. Name, loop, 2 nights, Wednesday return. The morning was cool, sky high, and clean. Oaks underfoot, their acorns making marbles out of the trail. Birds complaining in bursts. Squirrels throwing their weight around in the leaves. For the first few hours, it was what I came for. Quiet, scattered light, no people. Just after noon, I stepped off the main trail to a mossy skid road. Stopped for photos. The seed heads lit like filaments in the cut. When I stood and took another few steps, I saw a boot print across mine. Not next to, over. My heel, then another heel pressed clean into the same dirt, fresh enough the crumble on top hadn't dried. First thought, maybe I looped onto my own path. No, my track was clear. Second thought, someone just passed through. I listened, only a jay, only the trickle of hidden water. No poles clicking, no voices, just that single overlay print. I took a photo of it with my phone, geotag on. Told myself it was coincidence and moved on. 40 minutes later, I saw another. Same deal. Someone had stepped exactly where I had earlier, drifting just an inch left this time. That was when the hairs on my calves prickled before my head gave it words. I camped that night on a knob with a ridge view. Good trees for a hang, breeze steady. Did the routine, stove off, no fire, water boiled and filtered, ramen with peanut butter and jerky. I shot a few frames of sunset, tucked the camera by my head inside the tent, bear bag line thrown and clipped, the kind of camp I could be proud of in daylight. At around 11, I woke. Heard it first as a question. Was that wind? Was that me? No, it was breathing. Human. Close, just on the far side of nylon. Nylon carries sound differently. Each exhale muffled by the fabric, but clear. I lay there, still, inventorying. Knife clipped to ridgeline bag, headlamp looped on my wrist. Phone at 50%, but no bars. I shifted once to ease a leg and a twig cracked outside. Perfect timing. Like whoever it was had been waiting for me to move. The breathing didn't break. I don't know if it was 10 minutes, 30. Hard to tell. It went on. Then it was gone. By morning, I found scuffed leaf litter behind the tent. No clear print, but the ground had been messed with. My bear hang was untouched. I broke camp more carefully than usual, folding things without letting them snap or clink. By midday, I found a twig structure on the trail. 3 sticks leaned into a triangle. Above it, a strand of camo paracord tied knee-height between two saplings. Not taut enough to trip, but there. A marker. I circled wide, moving quieter than I liked. Later, under a rock on the path, I found a note. Cheap lined pad paper, torn. 2 words, nice route. My name under it. Spelled correctly, lifted from the register. Blocky handwriting, heavy pressure. Not mine. That sealed it. Whoever it was had read the log, tracked my loop, and stayed close enough to step into my prints. I staged a decoy camp before dusk. Picked a saddle with water nearby, laid a fake fire ring, scattered a few rocks for ash, spread my pad to leave an imprint, draped the tent body, even poured ramen water into the dirt so it smelled like dinner. Bandana folded over a rock where a pillow would be, bare line tied off like I'd just pulled it down. From 20 yards, it would look like someone had settled for the night. Then I left, backtracking soft, cutting up into laurel. Picked a shelf with a blowdown for cover, belly down behind it. Camera on my chest, headlamp strap on my wrist, phone muted. I ate 2 almonds to give myself something to chew, then went still. Dusk crept in slow. Animals kept their usual chorus. Chipmunks, a barred owl, the wind. Then came the different sound. Leaf movement without wind. Human rhythm. He entered from the east, not the trail. Camo, cap, not shiny. Moved like someone who'd practiced blending. He went straight to the tent, stood where my head imprint was, leaned forward and put his mouth to the mesh gap. Exhaled. 1 long breath into where my face should have been. I called out from above, "Hey," not a shout, just enough. He didn't jolt, didn't look up. He turned toward the sound and walked into the brush, not hurried, like he'd already learned what he came to. That night, I moved again, tucked against a rock face with the hollow below me. Around midnight, I heard it once more. Breathing. This time farther off, like someone keeping distance, but making sure I knew they hadn't left. After an hour, it faded with the wind. At the trailhead next day, a ranger was checking the register. I gave the short version. He listened, then walked back half a mile with me. Off the path, we found 2 saplings rigged with small snares, cord knotted clean, and a tree with a dozen shallow notches carved mid-trunk, all at chest height. The ranger hesitated, then mentioned a bow hunter who'd gone missing the fall before. Truck still at the trailhead, no signs since. No resolution. They didn't say it was connected. They also didn't say it wasn't. Back home, I dumped my last camera card. 3 frames I didn't remember taking were at the end. Autofocus hunting on shadow, catching texture that looked like fabric before sliding off. Nothing sharp, just hints. Enough to know the lens had tried. Since then, I still hike. But my solos end at noon. I join groups for long trips, my camp's more exposed, and I don't leave a register note without thinking about who else might be reading. I don't know what he wanted. To test me? To practice? To see how close he could get? All I know is for 2 days, a man in camo moved just behind me, stepped in my tracks, exhaled into my tent, and walked away when I called out, not because he was scared, but because he'd already decided his part was done. After Mark died, people told me I should move. Smaller place, less to take care of, fewer corners for the night to hold on to. But the house near Ogden was ours. The girls knew every creak in the floor and every drafty window, and I needed sameness more than I needed less work. So I stayed. By June 2020, I'd found a routine that helped me stay sane. Afternoons were chaos. Snacks, coloring, playground bruises, small fights over dolls. Evenings had a pattern the 3 of us relied on. Bath, pajamas, teeth. 2 bedtime books. We negotiate, but it's always 2. The Fox nightlight comes on, glowing orange against the wall. I sit on the edge of their beds a few minutes after lights out. Then I carry the laundry basket to the couch, fold until the pile is neat, and call that my exercise for the day. Diesel, our Belgian Malinois, usually stretches out near the back door, head on his paws, still as stone, watching like it's his job. Diesel came to us 6 months earlier, after the funeral. Ethan, my brother-in-law, is K9. He showed up with Diesel and said, "I can't replace a person, but I can give you someone who understands a job." Diesel wasn't a puppy. He already knew more about obedience than I did. He slipped into our lives like he'd been waiting for us. The girls built a blanket fort over him that first week. He didn't twitch. He sleeps inside every night. Always has. That first week of June, everything was normal. Until Friday night. At 2:17 a.m., Diesel lifted his head and growled, directed at the back door. It was enough to stop me cold. His body was rigid, ears up, nose fixed. The wind chimes weren't moving, the house was still. He didn't lunge, didn't move closer, just held the space as if saying, "This is the line." I lay there listening. After a minute, he settled back down, but not fully. His eyes stayed open, tracking. In the morning, when I let him out, he sprinted across the yard straight to the barn. Normally, he runs a loop, checks the fence, noses around the cottonwood. Not that morning. He went right to the barn, circled it once, then trotted back to me. His chest was high, tail stiff. It felt like he'd just reported something. Saturday night, same thing. 2:17, the growl. Sunday morning, same sprint to the barn, same circle. By Monday night, I was already awake when it started. He stood at the back door again, body taut, every line of him angled outward. Tuesday morning, I walked out myself. The barn was just storage. Old tools, chicken feed, bins of decorations, the sled that breaks every winter. The doors were latched. The padlock I'd put on the side door last month, still there. But the feed bag was sliced open across the top. A straight line. I told myself I'd been careless with scissors. I clipped it closed, shook my head at myself, and went back inside. That night, he didn't even pretend to rest. He lay in the hall with his body angled so he could see both the girls' door and the back door. His chin was on his paws, but his eyes never closed. Wednesday morning, I noticed the padlock had a faint crescent of rubbed paint. Paint kiss, my dad used to say when something new had been handled. That was when I called Ethan. "He keeps doing it," I said, "every night just past 2 a.m. Growls at the door. In the morning, he runs straight to the barn. Feed bag was cut. Now the lock looks used." Ethan was quiet. Finally, he said, "He's telling you a story. Let him finish it." "What does that mean?" "Don't talk him out of it because you're tired. If it's nothing, he'll stop. If it's something, he'll keep telling you until you understand." "Should I let him out at night?" "Not yet. Wait for daylight. If you release him, release with a purpose, and don't go out empty-handed." I kept thinking about that. Diesel wasn't barking or panicking. He was warning, steady, patient. Thursday night, he planted himself in the hall again. I tried to coax him back to the couch. He didn't budge. He stayed as a line drawn between my daughters and whatever was out there. Friday morning, he ran to the barn again. This time he darted back to me, then to the barn, then back again, agitated. When I went to check, I found another feed bag cut open. Another jug toppled. It didn't look like raccoons. It looked like someone living light. I stood there, realizing how long a man could survive on feed and hose water and patience. I called Ethan again. He was even quieter this time. "If you release him," he said, "make sure you mean it." Saturday morning, I made the call. I asked my neighbor Carol if she could take the girls for pancakes. She said, bring them in slippers. She didn't ask questions, but she read me well. After they left, Diesel paced the back door until I clipped the long line. His whole body was saying, now. I opened the door and said the word Ethan had taught me. Seek. Diesel launched like a shot, streaked across the yard, vanished into the barn. One sharp bark echoed, then silence. I grabbed the handgun from the lockbox, checked it the way Mark taught me, flashlight in the other hand, and thumbed 911 on speaker. Then I went. I stepped into a cloud of straw dust. The beam from my light danced through it like fog. Diesel was in the side room, braced over a man on the concrete floor. He had the guy on the ground. That man wasn't going anywhere. Diesel had his forearm in his jaws and wasn't budging. The man's free hand hovered near his waistband, where a pistol grip stuck out. Diesel kept him still, his body pressed like a weight. I forced the words out flat and firm, though my hands weren't. Don't move. The man muttered something I couldn't catch. Diesel shifted, not tearing, just pressing harder. Out, I commanded. Diesel didn't release. Good. I gave the practiced cue Ethan had drilled into me. Diesel unclamped, pulled back, and planted himself across the man's shoulders, muzzle at his ear, vibrating with readiness. The deputies arrived minutes later, guns drawn but calm. They secured the weapon first, cuffed the man, and praised Diesel with careful words. He didn't relax until I gave him his release command. They found more in the barn. A blanket rolled behind feed bales, peeled soda bottles, a flashlight, rope, zip ties. He had been living there, waiting, watching. Turns out he had a record. Felonies for home invasions, robbery, 2 cases with the word hostage in them. He'd been planning. Ethan pulled up not long after having heard the call. He crouched next to Diesel, checked his teeth, his jaw, his body. You did your job, he said, voice tight. Diesel leaned into his chest like he'd been waiting for that. The deputies later told me they didn't know how long he'd been watching the house. They found tools and signs that he'd been preparing. I don't let myself picture the other version of the ending. The girls only know the light version. They came home to Carol saying Diesel was very brave. They hugged him until he groaned. At the end, those growls were Diesel telling me, in his own language, listen, pay attention. And I did. That night, Diesel slept like stone, and I sat on the couch in silence, watching him. That dog, he'd saved all 3 of us. If these countryside stories shook you the way they did with me, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe so you never miss the next scare, and let me know in the comments how you'd handle these situations. And if you think the countryside is creepy, wait until you meet the people offering free rides. Click now to watch 4 disturbing hitchhiking horror stories. Trust me, next time you see a thumb out on the roadside, you'll think twice. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.